She needed money to save her father. He needed a child to heal an ache that never faded. One agreement offered both a solution and a storm. What happens when desperation collides with desire, and a deal becomes something neither could have imagined? Stay tuned for Bound by a Promise, Freed by Love. The morning sun streamed through the tall glass windows of Hawes Industries, painting the polished oak floors and brushed steel with golden warmth. From the top floor of the Houston Tower, the city stretched wide below, cars weaving like red ribbons across sunlit streets. Inside, order reigned. Robert Hawes sat behind his walnut desk, his calm presence wrapped in a perfectly cut charcoal suit. A framed photograph sat beside his laptop, a smiling woman with light brown hair and green eyes. Lydia, gone 2 years now, but her memory lingered in every corner of his life. He looked at the empty chair opposite him and murmured softly, "Morning, Lydia." Still trying to run things the way you'd want, a knock interrupted the quiet. "Come in," he said. Amanda Shaw entered, tablet in hand, her professionalism as steady as ever. Her soft curls were neatly tied back, and her beige blouse complemented the warmth of her deep brown skin. She was capable, precise, the anchor in Robert's ever-turning world. "Good morning, Mr. Hawes," she said evenly, though fatigue shadowed her eyes. "Here's your schedule for today. Investor briefing at 9, board call at 11, and dinner with Mr. Redding at 7. Robert nodded. "Thank you, Amanda. You're always one step ahead." She smiled faintly, not meeting his gaze. Then her phone buzzed. She glanced down, and something flickered across her face. Fear, or worry, gone almost as soon as it appeared. "You can take that if it's important," he offered. "It's fine," she said quickly, slipping it away. "Just personal?" He watched her leave, but her voice, her tone, something about it stayed with him. Later that morning, while crossing the corridor toward the conference room, Robert stopped. Faint, muffled sobs drifted from the employee lounge. Quietly he followed the sound. There she was, Amanda, sitting alone, phone clutched to her ear, shoulders trembling. "Please," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Just give me a few more days." "I'll find the money. Don't cancel the surgery. He won't make it without it." Robert froze. A heaviness settled in his chest. He turned away, giving her privacy, but her words wouldn't leave him. That evening, when the day's chaos had faded and Houston's skyline shimmered under twilight, Robert called her back into his office. She entered, composed but fragile. "You wanted to see me, sir?" "Sit," he said gently. She obeyed, trying to mask the exhaustion in her eyes. "I overheard part of your conversation earlier," he began. "Your father, he's sick?" She stiffened. "I'm sorry, sir. I didn't mean to." "I'm not upset." He interrupted softly. "Tell me what's going on." Her fingers twisted together. "He needs heart surgery." "They won't operate until we pay the advance. I've tried everything, assistance programs, loans, but it's never enough." She gave a shaky laugh. "Turns out compassion doesn't cover medical bills." Robert leaned back, thoughtful. "How much do you need?" "More than I could ever earn," she whispered. For a moment, silence filled the room, just the hum of the AC and the distant city sounds below. Then Robert stood, walking to the window. His reflection stared back, successful, powerful, but utterly alone. When he turned, his tone was calm but resolute. "Amanda, there's something I need to ask you. It's unconventional." She blinked. "Unconventional." "I've been considering surrogacy," he said quietly. "My late wife and I wanted children, but life had other plans. I've thought about adoption, but nothing feels right. I want a biological child. Amanda's eyes widened. I don't understand. I'll handle everything. Medical, legal, and living expenses, plus a financial arrangement more than enough for your father's surgery. In return, you'd carry my child. The air stilled. The words hung heavy. You're asking me to be your surrogate? She said, her voice trembling. Yes. Mr. Hawes, that's not something you ask your employee. She said, rising slightly. I know how it sounds, he said softly, but I trust you. You're steady, kind, and responsible. I couldn't imagine trusting anyone else with something this important. Her throat tightened. You can't just fix everything with money. I'm not trying to fix something, he replied. I'm trying to build something, and maybe this helps you too. Tears welled in her eyes. You have no idea what you're asking of me. I do, he said quietly. That's why I'll give you time. No pressure, just think about it. That night, Amanda sat in her small apartment on the east side of Houston. Her father lay in the next room, frail but sleeping. Her younger brother, Eli, scrolled through bills on his phone. $120,000. He muttered. Even if we sell everything, it's still not enough. Amanda stared at the floor. There might be another way, she said softly. Eli looked up, wary. What kind of way? She told him. Every word. When she finished, silence filled the room. That's insane, he said finally. I know. You're not actually thinking about it. Her voice cracked. Dad's out of time, Eli. He looked at her. His sister, his protector, the woman who'd carried their family through every storm. You shouldn't have to do that just to save him. Maybe I don't have to, she whispered. Maybe I choose to. He didn't argue again. A week later, Amanda walked back into Robert's office. I've thought about your offer, she said steadily. I'll do it. Robert exhaled slowly, a tension he hadn't known he carried easing from his shoulders. Are you sure? Yes, on one condition. This stays private. No one at the company can know. Agreed, he said immediately. Confidentiality guaranteed. The contract was signed 2 weeks later. Thick pages of legal language witnessed and sealed. Amanda's hands trembled as she placed her signature beside Robert's. He, in contrast, appeared calm, composed, but beneath that stillness lay something more complicated. Gratitude, guilt, and a hint of fear. Everything moved quickly after that. The sterile rhythm of hospital corridors replaced the polished calm of Hawes Industries. Paperwork turned into medical tests, consultations, and long private discussions behind closed doors. Counseling sessions followed, required, professional, and probing, though neither Amanda nor Robert revealed more than they had to. The doctors spoke in calm, clinical tones about timelines, compatibility, and expectations, while Amanda's mind drifted between hope and disbelief. Every appointment felt surreal, a life-altering agreement being translated into medical terms and signed consent forms. Then came the procedure. The day was bright and unnervingly quiet. Amanda lay under the soft glare of hospital lights, a nurse's voice fading into background noise. Somewhere outside the sterile walls, Robert waited, pacing, unreadable. Days turned into weeks, routine checkups, more tests, more silence. And then, one afternoon, the doctor smiled faintly and turned the screen toward her. A flicker, a small, steady pulse glowing in a sea of grey and white. For a moment, Amanda couldn't breathe. Her throat tightened, her eyes burned. The doctor said something about viability, about care, but she barely heard him. Because there it was, a heartbeat, faint, fragile, and impossibly real. You're officially expecting. Amanda stared at the monitor, that tiny pulse of life, and felt something shift inside her. It wasn't love, not yet. But it was real. Robert wasn't in the room that day. He was in a board meeting, surrounded by numbers and negotiations. But when his phone buzzed and he read Amanda's text, it worked. He closed his eyes and exhaled. For the first time in years, something felt possible again. Amanda's world changed quickly after that. Robert insisted she move into one of his properties on the outskirts of Austin, a quiet ranch-style house with wide porches, soft light, and acres of oak trees that whispered with the Texas wind. "It's safer there," he'd said. "No stress. No press at first," she resisted. "I don't want to live off your money." "You're not?" he said simply. "You're protecting my child." So she went. Days passed in a quiet rhythm. Morning walks, doctor visits, emails she still handled remotely for Hawes Industries. Robert visited on weekends, sometimes bringing groceries, sometimes just sitting with her on the porch as the sun sank low. He'd ask about her health, her cravings, her sleep. She'd answer politely, keeping a distance she wasn't sure she wanted. But something about him, the way he spoke softly when he thought she wasn't listening, the way he carried loneliness like a shadow, it began to wear at her walls. One evening, he arrived with takeout from her favorite diner. "How did you know I've been craving this?" she asked, laughing. He smiled faintly. "You mentioned it once, months ago. I remember things like that. They ate in comfortable silence. After dinner, she stood on the porch, the night air cool against her skin. The stars burned brighter here, unspoiled by city lights. Robert joined her. "You can see the Milky Way tonight," he murmured. She tilted her head. "You sound like someone who actually stops to look." "I didn't used to," he said quietly. "Not until recently." Amanda glanced at him, the man who had offered her the most impossible bargain of her life. And for a fleeting moment, she saw not her employer, not the billionaire businessman, but a man still grieving, still searching. She looked away quickly. "You shouldn't get attached," she said softly. He hesitated. "Maybe it's too late for that." Months passed. Her belly grew. So did the tension she refused to name. They moved through a fragile balance, professional by day, something unspoken by night. Sometimes, when she laughed, Robert found himself smiling without meaning to. Sometimes, when she felt the baby kick, she'd reach for his hand, and he'd let it rest there, wordless and awed. But there were lines neither dared to cross. Until one night, during a thunderstorm that rolled over the Texas hills, the power went out. Amanda, startled, called his name in the dark. He found her in the hallway, flashlight in hand. "Just a storm," he said gently. She nodded, trying to steady her breathing. When the lightning flashed again, she caught the look in his eyes, warm, protective, and something deeper she couldn't define. "Robert," she whispered, "don't." But he did. He brushed a strand of hair from her face, his fingers lingering a heartbeat too long. And just like that, the walls crumbled. What began as comfort became something more, something neither of them could name, but both felt with every heartbeat. When morning came, sunlight spilled across tangled sheets and a silence too fragile to break. Amanda sat up, her hand resting on her stomach, guilt and wonder battling in her chest. "This wasn't part of the deal," she said quietly. "I know," Robert replied, voice rough. "But maybe it should have been." Weeks turned into months, and whispers began to spread. Rumors among staff, questions from the media about the reclusive CEO spending weekends away. Amanda grew cautious, pulling back. Robert noticed, but said nothing. Then one afternoon she collapsed during a prenatal checkup. Robert was there within an hour, his face pale as the doctors explained. Exhaustion, stress, dehydration. Nothing fatal, but she needed complete rest. He sat by her hospital bed, his large hand enveloping hers. "You can't keep pushing yourself," he said quietly. "I'm fine." "No," he said firmly. "You're not." Her eyes filled with tears. "I can't lose this baby, Robert." "Not after everything, you won't," he promised. "I won't let that happen." And for the first time, she believed him. The months that followed blurred into a quiet rhythm of waiting and change. Amanda spent her days reading on the porch, feeling the baby's steady kicks beneath her palms. Robert visited more often, sometimes bringing work, sometimes just bringing peace. But beneath the gentle calm, emotions deepened, unspoken, undeniable. One evening, near the end of her pregnancy, Amanda sat in the nursery Robert had built. The walls were painted a soft sage green, sunlight spilling across the wooden crib. She ran her hand over the tiny blankets folded neatly inside. He appeared in the doorway, watching her with that quiet intensity she'd come to know. "You built all this yourself?" she asked, smiling faintly. "Mostly supervised others," he admitted. "But I did the finishing touches." "Why?" He hesitated. "Because I wanted to feel like I was doing something that mattered." Amanda turned toward him. "You already did. You gave me a way to save my father, and you gave me back a reason to live," he said softly. The words hung between them, trembling with truth. She looked away, blinking hard. "You shouldn't say things like that." "Why not?" "Because it makes this harder." "Maybe it was always meant to be hard," he said, stepping closer. "The best things usually are." Her heart raced, but before she could reply, a sharp pain cut through her. "Robert!" she gasped, gripping the edge of the crib. Within minutes, he had her in the car, racing through the dark Texas night toward St. Mary's Hospital. The rain came down hard, streaking across the windshield like silver threads. "Stay with me, Amanda," he said over and over. "Just breathe." Hours later, as dawn painted the horizon gold, the cries of a newborn filled the room. "It's a girl," the doctor said, smiling. "Healthy and strong." Amanda lay back, exhausted but radiant, tears streaming down her cheeks. Robert stood beside her, awe softening every line of his face. "She's perfect," he whispered. Amanda handed the baby over with trembling hands. "She's yours, Robert." He looked down at the tiny face, the soft curls, the small hands, and something broke open inside him. "No," he said quietly. "She's ours." Amanda froze. "What?" He looked up, eyes glistening. "I know what we agreed. I know what the contract says, but somewhere along the way it stopped being about that. I don't just want the baby, Amanda, I want you." Her heart thundered in her chest. "Robert, don't—" "I mean it," he said, his voice steady. "You gave me back a life I thought was gone. You gave me hope, laughter, peace. You made me remember what love feels like, tears spilled down her cheeks. You don't owe me love just because I carried your child. This isn't about owing," he said. "It's about choosing." He took her hand gently. "And I choose you." Months later, the house on the Austin ranch looked different, brighter, fuller. Amanda sat on the porch, cradling baby Grace, who slept soundly against her chest. Robert came out carrying 2 mugs of tea, the soft evening light catching in his hair. "You're getting good at this," she teased. "I've had a great teacher," he said, smiling. They sat together, the air thick with the scent of rain and wildflowers. For a long while, neither spoke. Then Robert reached for her hand. "You know," he said quietly, "I used to think happiness was something people like me didn't get twice." "And now?" she asked. He looked at her, his voice full of quiet certainty. Now I know love doesn't end when life falls apart. Sometimes it begins there. Amanda smiled, her heart full. Bound by a promise, she murmured. He brushed a kiss against her temple. Freed by love. The Texas sky stretched wide above them, painted with stars, the kind that only appear after the storm. The Texas sun hung low over the horizon, gilding the wide fields in amber light. Laughter echoed across the yard as Grace, now a toddling whirlwind of curls and curiosity, chased a butterfly through the tall grass. From the porch, Amanda watched her daughter with quiet joy. Life had settled into a rhythm she once thought impossible. Gentle mornings, honest work, evenings filled with peace instead of worry. Behind her, Robert stepped out, sleeves rolled up, a smudge of flour on his shirt. "She's going to catch that butterfly before we can blink," he said, sliding an arm around Amanda's waist. She smiled up at him. "And when she does, she'll set it free." That's what we taught her. He kissed her temple, his voice soft. "You saved my life, Amanda Shaw." She shook her head, eyes warm. "No, Robert, we saved each other." They stood together as the sky deepened into gold and lavender, their daughter's laughter still dancing on the breeze. Bound by a promise once made in desperation, they had found something far greater. A love that grew not from a contract, but from choice, trust, and time. And as the stars began to appear above the wide Texas sky, Amanda whispered to herself, "Some stories don't end. They just begin again, in the hearts of those brave enough to love." Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the story, please like, share, and subscribe to Boundless Echoes for more interesting stories. We really appreciate your support, and we do not take it for granted. Go ahead and comment where you are watching from, so we can give you a special shout-out. See you in the next video.